All right. So this is a fun one to do for me. Kind of a dive into my past. Picture this: Sicily. Now, New Jersey, 1994, 1995. I am in my mid 20s. I'm working a dead end job. I'm a wannabe writer at that point. I've had several short stories published in zines. So for you kids who don't know what a zine is, and I've met people who've said, oh, you zines. No, zine as in magazine. And basically most of them back in the 80s and the 90s were gonna, and still some today, were gonna be those Xerox side stapled, cheaply produced for the love magazines. Some got really big. Some of them became actual magazines over the years. Some of them are still going strong 40 years later, which is amazing. I was a huge fan of reading all of the zines back then, all of the horror fiction ones, and there were tons of them, all of the music ones, and again, tons of them. And man, I wish I had saved all those because there were some great interviews with like new bands that are now like huge. Like Metallica was just a random guy from Metallica was being interviewed in these zines because their first album was coming out, or that kind of thing. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of concert reviews, a lot of different things. So for me, starting off, I was sending stuff to zines to get published. Most of it was garbage. In fact, I'm going to say all of it was garbage. Some of it got published. My first one I ever did was called TNT Thrash and Trash. That's what TNT stood for. Thrash and Trash. And I had done some interviews with bands. I did one issue of this, okay? And I had a girlfriend at the time who worked in an office, and so she Xeroxed and side stapled like 100 copies for me. And it had and I had done an interview with the band Spread Eagle in the early 90s. um yeah, I'm gonna say like 89, 90, somewhere around there is when that came out. And I'd show you a copy of it, but I don't have a copy of it. They're all gone. Like an total idiot, I gave them all away. And that's what it was. It was just a free thing. It was my opinions on music, especially music growing up in New Jersey. So I had an interview with Xenon. I think I had an interview with American Angel, or I might have had, these are bands that I grew up listening to in the 80s and 90s. And I think, or I might have done concert reviews of those bands. So there's American Angel, Xenon, and Push were the three bands from New Jersey that I absolutely loved. I saw them anywhere they played in New York and New Jersey, anywhere in New Jersey, a lot of times up in New York, depending on where it was. Those are just my bands. Those were the bands that never broke, that never made it. Most people watching this video are going to go, I don't even know who they are. Although you can find American Angel and Xenon on Spotify. There's something. So anyway, those were my bands. So I did interviews with them, local bands that never went anywhere, and it was fun. It was a fun time to do that. So I did one issue, and I remember I brought like maybe 50 copies of it with me to Scatterbrain, who used to be Ludacris, and they were Scatterbrain. Don't Call Me Dude. Remember that song? Don't Call Me Dude. Scatterbrain was playing at the Fast Lane in Asbury Park, and I brought like 50 of them with me, and I just walked on because they had bleachers there. I just walked and I just handed out copies between sets right before Scatterbrain came on, and it was cool to see people just sitting there reading, going through, and of course, then a bunch of people couldn't care less, and they left copies. I should have picked them up. I did not. Um, and that was my first foray into getting started in zines, not only in reading them, trying to get my work into them, but creating my own. That was a lot of fun. Um, Years later, I managed a band called Mass Psychosis, death metal band, out of out of New Jersey, and out of Keyport, New Jersey. And one of the guys who was roadieing for them, Dominic, we were talking one day, and I told him about it, and he's like, "Oh, okay." And the very next practice, he showed up with a copy of it, a copy of TNT, Thrash and Trash, in a sealed bag that he had been at that show, and I had handed him a copy. I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was at the time, several years before, because now we're into the mid 90s. So it's been like 4 or 5 years. And I was like, that is so cool that you still have a copy. I should have taken the damn thing from him because I don't have a copy. I would love to go here's a copy. I don't have a copy. I'm like, let me just look it up. Maybe there's some weird chance that I can buy a copy. What? No, I don't see it anywhere. I didn't think it was possible to buy a copy of it, but I'm just, I'm looking. So that was my foray into it. So I did interviews with a bunch of bands for a second or third interview or issue, but I never did any more. I stopped talking to that girl. I didn't have a computer then. And, I didn't get a computer until like 1998. So this is like 89, 90, I'm basically just hand drawing stuff. I'm doing, I'm basically typing stuff on a typewriter or a word processor and then cutting it out and then gluing it on the page and gluing copies of pictures. I mean, the cover was, all of it was just bad. Dave Felix, if you happen to be out there listening, he did the photography for the first cover, a shot of Spread Eagle. So it was cool being able to talk to all these bands and to realize it's real easy, especially back then. It was real easy to just call up the record company in New York and go, "Hey, I want to do an interview with Spread Eagle. I know they're on tour now." And they're like, "Sure, let me put you in touch with Ray," that kind of thing. So it was a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun doing that. So now we get to the mid 90s, 94, 95, and I'm working in this dead end job selling shoes. And they open up a third store and they hire a manager for that store. And his name is Lou. And he's a little older than me. He's a lot weirder than me. And he is a computer nerd. Like he does stuff with computers. And so I tell him about my idea, and I say, "Hey, you know what? I got this idea for a magazine, a zine that I would like to, but I would like it to be more than some side stapled thing." And he was like, so he got very interested right away, and he's like, "All right." So now at this point, I think I'm recently divorced from the first wife. I'm living at home with my parents. I have no money. I am friggin' broke, and I'm in my early 20s. And I'm like, I said, "The problem is I don't have the money to do this." He's like, "Well, maybe we can work together and I'll figure it out because I have some money." Because at the time he was divorced and he was living with his parents. Now he was probably 10 years older than me at that point or whatever. He also drank a ton of 2 liters of Diet Coke every day at work. Like 10 of them a day. Ridiculous. I don't even know if Lou's still alive at this point. I'm going to be honest with you. He'd be in his mid 60s to almost 70. Crazy. Anyway, so we decide we're going to do a magazine. And so at that point, also, I had worked for about a year on and off with a management company called Black Moon Music. And they, here's the thing. Jim Clark ran it. Great guy. He had all these gold records up on the wall in the office, this tiny little crappy office in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. And then years later, when you looked it up and you're like, he had nothing to do with this Rick Springfield album. Why is his name on this as a producer or something? Anyway, I worked with them for a little bit, and then a nor'easter came and basically wiped out the office. And that guy just disappeared. He owed me a ton of money. And for all the work that I had done, bands I had signed for him and whatnot, he ran off. So then I was telling Lou about this, and we looked it up, and there was no trade. He had not trademarked Black Moon Music. So Lou trademarked it because I didn't have the money. And I said, let's do Black Moon Magazine, which we did. And he trademarked, he did all the legal blah, blah, blah stuff, which I realized at the time that meant that he owned everything. But I was just happy to just get back in there, do interviews, hang out with bands. I also wanted to do horror fiction in it. I was still writing at that point. So we came out with the first issue of Black Moon. It was $3.95, July, August 1995. The premiere issue featuring, these are the bands and people I interviewed. Immured, Whiteout, Fact Sheet 5, which was R. Seth Friedman, Internal Bleeding, Landfill, and Banner of Hope. It also had music reviews, horror fiction, zine reviews, poetry, comics, and more. The cover was done by my friend Frank Valenti, who it's kind of a dark cover. Anyway, so here it is, the premiere issue of Black Moon Magazine. And we took advertising on it. It was how many pages? 42 pages. And we got a printer in upstate New York to put this together. And we had I had a lot of fun doing it. So we had I was the editor. Associate editor was Chad Valenzola, who was my ex-wife's brother. Copy editor with Louis Sorrentino Jr. That was the guy I was talking about. I guess I was still married at this point because Tracy Rosamilia and Chris Aaron, which was her son. Contributors were David A. Rose, Jason Kravitz, Casey Harvey, Mike Teddo, and Winston Sellinger. The cover artwork was by Frank Wiz Valenti. And then special thanks to Balrog, who did the Azrael fanzine for his reviews of all Death Doom thrash recordings. So we even got an ISSN. So this is all bunch of different features here. There was a horror fiction Crow Mill Bridge by me, a horror short story, which is in, I think, the first or second of my short story collections that came out. Another La Mort de Mortimer by Winston Sellinger, another ones, and then a bunch of other stuff. We had a giveaway, we had subscription rates, advertising rates, all of it. So we were on our way, I thought. We had some artwork in here. Let me see if any of these, real quick. Let me see if any of these music ones are. I don't know what just happened. That was the first one. The second issue, I don't have a copy of. Again, what an idiot, right? 40 years now. This has been 40 freaking years, a little over 40 years. I don't have a second issue copy. I looked everywhere. I'm like, I thought I had this. I probably have it in a box somewhere, but it's not here. That's just annoying. So issue 3 comes out, and we're bigger. We're at like, what, 60 pages. Okay. So Black Moon issue number 3, $3.95 still. $5.50 foreign. I guess we were selling them foreign at that point. October, November 1995. Interviews Souls at Zero, Immolation, Crucifier, Naked Whipper, Reverse, Janet Fox, a Scavenger's Newsletter, feature horror fiction from Charlie Jacob, who passed away a couple years ago. Music reviews, zine reviews, poetry, and more. There is the cover. Black and white cover, black and white on the inside, and other short stories in here. We had giveaways. We had we had four short stories. Barbara Malenke, Valerie Harding, Charlie Jacob, and Deborah Hunt. I believe all women. We had the feature interview. So Souls at Zero was a great great interview. I did that live at I don't remember what club. Let me see if it says what club. This might be all really boring for you, but for me this is exciting. This is a look back at my life. Birch Hill and Old Bridge. They opened for Ugly Kid Joe. That's right. And so I did the interview with them. So Souls at Zero, they were Wrathchild, and then Wrathchild America. So pretty good interview with them. A lot of different. I think we did a lot more reviews in this one. So basically, I did all the groundwork. A lot of demos in this. A lot of demos. Wow. Susie and the Banshees CD, The Rapture. This is where I met Mass Psychosis, as a matter of fact. I reviewed their demo and then started working with them. Propane. So a lot of good stuff. Anyway, so that was the third issue of that. Fourth issue. This one took off, and I'm going to tell you why. So this is issue 4 from January 1995, 1996. I interviewed Mass Psychosis. After I interviewed them, we started working together. I became their manager. Band Sunshine Blind, which was a goth band. What was her name? I'll look it up. Very, very, very pretty. Horror of Horrors, Hansel und Gretel. Darlene Daniels of Nocturnal Ecstasy, which is funny because Darlene Daniels of Nocturnal Ecstasy, she published my very first short story, Beastie, in 1988. So this is the reason that this thing took. I mean, we sold thousands of copies of this. We sold so many freaking copies that we ran out of the run, and then we had to pour more money. So by this point, issue 4, we're not making any money. We're making enough to make more of the next issue. We've sold enough copies of 1, 2, and 3. We were like, you know what? We're up to like 1,000 copies, which is pretty good for a zine back then. And we're not in any real stores. We're selling them, basically. We're putting them in news groups. We're putting them, Lou's doing all of the sales like that. I was putting copies in Scavengers newsletter, stuff like that. So this one took off because Marilyn Manson on the cover and an interview with Twiggy that I did at the Stone Pony. This was when the EP had just come out, and everybody wanted a Marilyn Manson interview. Everybody was talking. They were the shit hot 1995, 1996. And I just called up the record company. I was like, hey, they're coming to the Stone Pony. I'd love to do an interview with them. They're like, sure, meet Frank, their manager, at the door. I'm like, all right. And then that was it. Boom. It was cool because I was sitting towards the back, near the back door with Twiggy doing the interview, and there were people. It was freezing outside. There was people in line outside just staring in, watching me. It felt kind of cool. I wasn't even like a big fan of theirs at the time. I kind of knew some of their stuff, but I really wasn't into Marilyn Manson type of stuff. So I stayed for the show, which was crazy. So this was a lot of fun to do that interview. We had tons of people did poetry in this one. Horror fiction from Anthony V. Puglisi, Barbara Malenke, Fred Reed, maybe Fred Red, I don't know. Denise Sidoro, and D.F. Lewis. D.F. Lewis would send us 50 stories a month. that dude was writing a lot. So that was that. I mean, we had advertising. We had paid ads in this. We had all kinds of stuff. It was looking better. We got an ad for Carnifex, which is coming in March 1996. It was all death black metal bands that me and Balrog were putting together, featuring the world's most brutal bands. So it was going to be interviews with Oppressor, Usurper, Black Funeral, Witch Hunt, Occult, and more. Carnifex never came out. That never came out. But we sold so many copies of this Marilyn Manson one that we were like, you know what? We need to do another run of it, or we just need to do the next issue. And of course, we're like, let's just do the next issue. We probably should have done another run of the Marilyn Manson, to be honest with you, and made more money. Because even like 2 years later, I was getting people sending me cash in the mail in envelopes that they wanted a copy of this, which is insane. And I was like, yeah, I got to send your money back because I am completely out. I think I have 2 copies of this left. That's it. Issue 5, which was my last issue. We went color on the cover. Again, the printer up in upstate New York was making copies, and then he would send us all these copies, which is cool. So we interviewed Napalm Death. I interviewed Napalm Death, Sophia Ron, Nephobia, The Gathering, The Machine in the Garden, Dead World, and Beelzebub of the Grimoire. And feature horror fiction from Ken Goldman. Full color. The picture when we did it, it kind of smushed. So he looks like a happy evil devil. The real picture was anyway. And Mass Psychosis, their Necroporno album ad on the back. Wow. So let's see so we did I did those interviews. So the horror fiction was from Diana McCrary, Tim Emsweiler, Ken Goldman, Lorraine A. Jean, Robert Stephen Ryan, B.J. Stevens, and Julie Lynn Hayes. I don't recognize any of those names now. I wonder if any of them are still out there doing their thing. Lot more ads in this one. We're at 68 pages. We have poetry. A lot of ads for other places. So this was a good. I review some other zines. Some great stuff. The Gathering, they were pretty good. I remember. Napalm Death, I got to meet them. Got to hang out with Napalm Death. Shane, I interviewed Shane. So that was a pretty cool interview. Oh, let me see. Oh, good. So issue 2, I don't know if you can see it. The cover for issue 2 is there at the bottom. Man, I wish I still had a copy. That had interviews with Aftermath, Mordor, Accursed, New York Hardcore Squatters, Afterglow, and Deadline, and D.F. Lewis was the featured author. So that dude wrote a ton of. So here's my old P.O. box on Route 35 in Middletown, New Jersey. Wow. So anyway, so that was that. So at this point, okay, by the time we get to this point, obviously we're doing color covers. It's costing us a lot more money. I don't have any money. I am freaking broke at this point. In a dead end job and everything else. And so working with Mass Psychosis, I'm being pulled in 100 different directions. My divorce is final from the first wife. I believe towards the end of this, I start. There's no date on this. Probably like 1996. I'm gonna guess. And I start dating somebody else at that point. She has 2 kids, which I will eventually adopt, and they will become my kids. All that to say, me and Lou start to have a problem with what we want this Black Moon to be. He is, even though he's older, he is very, very much into goth music now. Dead Can Dance and Susie and the Banshees, all that kind of stuff, right? Cleopatra Records was huge back then. So he's into all that stuff. Me, I want to do Carnifex. I want to do death metal and black metal and thrash metal. I want to get into the heavier stuff. So we kind of go back and forth with that. We're talking money. I don't have any. He's sinking a ton of money into this. He's still living with his parents. I'm now renting a house for myself. So there's no money. There's no more money. So I say, why don't we go our separate ways? I'll take Carnifex. You take Black Moon. I mean, he basically paid for the whole thing anyway. And that's it. And we kind of, we broke up. And then maybe 6 months later, he puts out, as far as I know, he only did one more issue, which which I think I had to buy. So at this point, we've gone from $3.95 to $4.50 for issue 5. So issue 6, he keeps it to $4.50. So he's doing, basically, he does a bunch of interviews himself. He starts actually going out and doing interviews. So he does interviews with Love Spirals, Downwards, Vitriola. He takes my Sunshine Blind, Carolyn Blind was her name. That's right. He takes Sunshine Blind, that one, and he adds, he's like, can I reuse this one to fill it up? I'm like, yeah, whatever. Lycia Fade, and he interviews Sam Rosenthal of Black Tape for a Blue Girl. He still runs the Mass Psychosis ad, I just realized. So his horror fiction is from Steve Eller, Donna Taylor Burgess, who I remember her, Carl R. Goff, D.F. Lewis, and Kevin L. Donahue. So there you go. I was now a contributor to this. Yeah, June 1996, he put this out. So I think he did the reviews, and they were all, at this point too, we were getting a ton of zines were being sent to us for free to do a review. Cassettes were tons and tons. I mean, I had boxes of cassettes. And then Lou was like, give me those cassettes because they're Black Moon property kind of thing. We kind of had a little thing over nothing. It was stupid. And that was it. That was me done with Black Moon magazine. And it's a regret. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a regret. I wish I had stayed with it. I wish we had added gothic stuff, all of his stuff he listened to, all the stuff I listened to, and we just made big. But there was no way we were going to be able to stick with color covers. I mean, these issues were like, we were charging you $4.50. I think it was costing us like $3 each, and we were doing like 1,000 or 1,500 at a time, plus the shipping on that. It was just we were just taking a bath on this. It was a lot of fun to do. Years later, when I moved, 2001, I moved down to Florida. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll jump back in and do something. And I got in contact with Lou, sent him a message, and he was still very, very hurt that I had walked away from it, and he was unable to do any more. He couldn't do any more issues or anything. So it kind of destroyed the whole thing. But yeah, I would definitely would go back again, and if I could turn back time, it's one of the regrets that I did not keep going. Would we be doing a 40th anniversary issue? I doubt it, but still, it was a lot of fun to do. I'm sure it ran out or whatever. I was gonna say, well, maybe he still owns a copyright. Who friggin' knows? Anyway, this is Black Moon magazine. This is what I've done. I've written articles over the years for a lot of other zines, a lot of other magazines, a lot of different things. It's just fun to do. I enjoy it. So if you are old like me and you remember zine culture and you remember collecting these in the 80s and the 90s into the 2000s, and there's still a huge zine culture, especially here in Jacksonville, Florida. They do a gathering, I think, once a month for zine people, and they do a a signing. They do a book signing thing, a zine signing, I guess they call it, once a year. And there's 100 different zines in that place. And some of them are like super slick, look great. Some of them are just side stable things. It's whatever your thing is. A lot of punk bands, a lot of punk people did a lot of zines back in the day, which was great. That's how I heard about a lot of other bands. That's how I heard about a lot of other things. So if you remember any of this, make a comment. If you don't, and you're like, yeah, that's interesting, then make a comment. If you're like, yeah, I don't really care about this, I don't know, make a comment. Make sure you hit the subscribe button too. I would appreciate that, and watch more of my videos. Thank you for watching, and I really appreciate it.